You crawled into bed on time, you didn't drink caffeine, you avoided your phone, you even did a bit of deep breathing before turning off the lights. By all accounts, it should have been a normal night, a good night, a restful one. But your eyes won't stay closed, your thoughts won't stop drifting, your chest feels tight and you're not sure why. Your legs feel restless, like they're waiting for something. You shift, you sigh, you stare into the dark and whisper to yourself, "But I wasn't even stressed today." Except maybe you were. Not the kind of stress that announces itself loudly. No crisis, no argument, no major deadline. Just 100 quiet moments. The polite email that made your stomach turn. The appointment you forgot. The smile you forced when you were tired. The conversation you replayed in your head while walking to the car. The silence that felt too loud. The loneliness that didn't have a name. Your mind may have filed the day away as fine, but your body never bought that story. And now, here in the stillness of night, your body is trying to finish what your mind ignored. The stress cycle. Because unprocessed stress doesn't vanish. It waits. And when the world goes quiet, it speaks. That's where we begin tonight. The myth of "I'm not stressed." One of the most common things people say when they talk about their sleep issues is this: "I don't understand. I'm not even that stressed." They say it with confusion, with a hint of guilt, as if their body is misbehaving, as if the only legitimate reason to be tired but wired is a major life event, a breakdown, a visible meltdown. And because their days seem calm on the surface, they assume the problem must be internal, something wrong with them. But here's the truth. Stress isn't just about the big dramatic moments. Most of the stress that disrupts sleep is quiet. It's subtle, it's cumulative, and most importantly, it's stored. Your nervous system isn't tracking your to-do list, it's tracking your sense of safety. And safety is a full-body, moment-to-moment experience, not a line item on a productivity app. You might have gone the entire day without consciously feeling anxious, but that doesn't mean your body didn't experience tension. Micro-stressors, like traffic, decision fatigue, shallow breathing, holding your pee for too long, keeping in tears, pushing down resentment, avoiding hard conversations, constantly forming okay. These all signal to your nervous system that it is not safe to fully let go. So even when your day looks peaceful from the outside, your internal system may have never truly downshifted. And that's the myth. The myth is that if you're not overwhelmed, panicked, or crying in a bathroom stall, then you must not be stressed. But your body knows better. It knows when you're carrying too much. It knows when you've been holding your breath. It knows when you've been too fine for too long. And if you don't release that tension during the day, it doesn't just disappear. It waits for the moment when you stop pretending, when everything is still, when your performance is over. That moment is usually bedtime. That's when your body whispers, "Now can we process it?" And if you haven't built space into your day to feel what's really going on, if you've been too busy, too polite, too functional, then night becomes the only time your system feels safe enough to unfreeze. And that can feel like insomnia. But really, it's intelligence. Your body isn't betraying you, it's just asking to be heard. Micro-stressors and their cumulative effect. Stress doesn't always shout. Sometimes it whispers, all day long. And you don't even notice until your head hits the pillow. Micro-stressors are the kind of stress most of us dismiss because they don't feel like a real reason to be overwhelmed. They're too small, too ordinary, too constant. But that's the problem. They don't overwhelm you in one wave. They wear you down in layers. Think about the way your body tenses ever so slightly every time a notification buzzes on your phone. The way your heart rate speeds up just a touch when your boss's name pops into your inbox. The way you hold your breath as you scroll past someone's perfect vacation photos. The way you pretend not to be bothered by the sound of traffic, by clutter in the kitchen, by the thought you didn't follow up with that person yet, or that something about today still feels unfinished. None of these things are emergencies, but your body doesn't need emergencies to feel unsafe. It only needs a steady stream of signals that say, keep watch, be careful, not yet. And that's what microstressors do. They don't create panic. They create pressure. Low-grade, unrelenting background pressure. Background pressure. Like the hum of a refrigerator you don't notice until it turns off. Then suddenly, the silence feels overwhelming. That's what bedtime becomes for many of us. The first moment the hum goes quiet, but by then, the damage is already done. Your body is still on alert. It's still buzzing. It's still carrying the emotional tab of 100 small things that didn't seem like a big deal. And in the absence of new input, no phone, no conversation, no distraction, your body finally has space to notice how much it was holding. That's why sleep doesn't always come, even when you're exhausted. Because exhaustion isn't the same as readiness. Being drained doesn't mean you're relaxed. Sometimes it means you've been absorbing tiny hits all day without release. And those hits add up. They add up in your shoulders, in your jaw, in your gut, in your breath, in the way your thoughts feel sharper at night, not because they're more true, but because they finally have room to echo. The nervous system doesn't wait for big trauma to get dysregulated. It's more like a sponge. And microstressors, even the ones you laughed off or handled fine, still leave a residue. That residue builds up. And the more it builds, the harder it becomes to slip into rest. So the goal isn't to eliminate stress. That's not possible. The goal is to build awareness. To start noticing how often your body tenses without you realizing, how often you override small discomforts for the sake of being polite, productive, efficient, unfazed. Because every time you ignore those cues, your body doesn't stop speaking, it just gets quieter. Until nighttime, when all of that quiet finally becomes loud. The good news? Once you start noticing the microstressors, you can begin releasing them. Not by fixing everything, but by becoming gentle enough to feel them before they accumulate. In the next part, we'll look at the emotional side of this equation. What happens when you suppress your feelings all day long, and why those emotions tend to show up just as your head hits the pillow. Because stress isn't just physical, it's emotional too. And unprocessed emotions don't disappear. They wait, usually until it's dark and quiet enough to be heard. Emotional suppression and sleep resistance. There's a kind of exhaustion that comes from pretending you're okay, pretending you're over it, pretending nothing bothered you when deep down everything did. It's a quiet kind of pretending. Not the dramatic kind where you put on a show, but the subtle kind where you smile when you're hurt, say I'm fine when you're not, keep moving because stopping would mean feeling, and you don't have time to feel. You don't have space to fall apart, so you don't. You stay composed, efficient, focused. And during the day that works. People even admire you for it. You're the calm one, the strong one, the one who keeps things running. The one who doesn't make things awkward by being too emotional. But your body doesn't care about appearances. It cares about truth. And the truth is, emotion that isn't expressed doesn't go away. It doesn't dissolve. It doesn't quietly disappear because you smiled through it. It gets stored in your muscles, in your gut, in your breath. And when the distractions fade, when the lights dim, when the world goes still, your body finally asks, "Now? Can I let it out now?" And that can look like not sleeping. Because sleep is surrender. And surrender feels unsafe when you've spent the whole day holding everything in. That tightness in your chest, it's grief. That restlessness in your legs, it's anger. That clenching in your stomach, it's fear. That lump in your throat you keep swallowing down, that's sadness. And none of it disappears just because you ignore it. In fact, the more you suppress, the harder your system works to keep those feelings buried. And that takes energy. That keeps you on edge. That prevents you from crossing the threshold into deep, restorative sleep. You may not even realize you're suppressing. You might just call it being tired or being in your head. You might think, "I'm just overthinking again." But often, what we call overthinking is actually unprocessed feeling, trying to find a way out through thought because we're too afraid to feel. But feelings don't need to be fixed. They need to be felt. Not all at once, not in a flood, just a little at a time, just enough for your body to know it's not alone in carrying them. That's why emotional awareness isn't just a therapy concept. It's a sleep strategy, because the more you give your emotions space during the day, the less they have to steal it at night. So start asking gently, what did I feel today that I didn't express? You don't need to solve it, just name it. Let your nervous system know you're listening, that it doesn't have to scream through insomnia to be heard. And if it feels like too much to open that door, that's okay. You can start small. One breath, one word, one tear you don't wipe away. That's more than enough. Because the body only resists sleep when it still believes it has to keep protecting you from the feelings you won't allow yourself to feel. In the next part, we'll explore a phenomenon that's easy to miss: high-functioning hyperarousal. When you look calm, productive, and composed on the outside, but inside, your nervous system is in overdrive. Because not all stress looks like stress, and not all stillness is restful. High-functioning but hyper-aroused. Some people panic visibly. Their stress is loud, racing heart, sweaty palms, anxious pacing, tears they can't hold back. But others look fine. They smile. They show up. They answer every email. They go to work, raise their kids, help their friends, check off their lists. They're organized. They're productive. They get things done. They're high-functioning. But inside, their nervous system is on high alert. Their breath is shallow. Their shoulders are tight. Their jaw hasn't unclenched in hours. They're exhausted but wired, restless but focused, calm on the outside, bracing on the inside. And when nighttime comes, that internal hum, the one they've been ignoring all day, becomes deafening. This is high-functioning hyperarousal. It's a state where your system is constantly scanning for what's next, what needs fixing, what could go wrong. You don't look anxious because you've learned to channel that energy into performance. You don't feel panicked because you've normalized tension. But your body is still operating in survival mode. You're not resting, you're managing. And there's a difference. This state is especially common among those who've been praised for being strong their whole lives. People who were never allowed to fall apart, who were rewarded for keeping it together, who never had the luxury of collapsing when life got too hard. So they learned to keep going, even when every part of them was screaming to slow down. Hyperarousal doesn't always mean racing thoughts. Sometimes it looks like perfectionism, overthinking, people-pleasing, overworking, being overly prepared, double-checking, never really relaxing, even during downtime. Even when you're off the clock, something in you is still on. So when you lie down at night, it makes sense that you don't fall asleep. Because you've spent the entire day running on adrenaline, and your body doesn't know how to switch gears just because the clock says bedtime. That's why traditional sleep advice, like just unwind, don't look at screens, go to bed at the same time, often doesn't help. Not because it's wrong, but because it's surface level. It assumes your body is in a state where sleep is accessible. And for people stuck in high-functioning hyperarousal, it isn't. Because sleep isn't just the absence of noise or light or movement. Sleep is surrender. And when your whole system is wired to stay in control, surrender doesn't feel safe. So if this is you, if you're someone who seems fine, who functions well, but secretly dreads the quiet hours, it's not because you're broken. It's because your body has been trained to survive, not to rest. And that training can be undone. Not overnight, not through willpower, but through nervous system repair. Through moments of stillness during the day that feel safe, not forced. Through emotional permission, through micro breaks, through breath. Through naming what you feel instead of pushing it down. We'll talk more about that in the next part. But for now, hear this. You don't have to collapse to deserve rest. You don't have to prove your exhaustion. You don't need to fall apart for your body to be allowed to slow down. Even high-functioning systems need recovery, especially yours. Listening to the body's language. Your body has been speaking to you for years. The question is, have you been listening? Not with logic, not with judgment, not with a checklist of symptoms to Google at 2 a.m., but with attention, with presence, with trust. Because long before your mind realizes you're stressed, your body already knows. Long before you say, I can't sleep, your body has already tightened, already braced, already shifted into defense. And it doesn't always scream, it doesn't need to. It just signals, quietly, consistently, patiently. But most of us were never taught how to understand that language. We were taught to interpret pain as weakness, fatigue as laziness, tension as normal. We learned to override, to numb, to push through. And now, when your body whispers, when it tightens your chest, knots your stomach, clenches your jaw, you ignore it. Not because you're careless, but because you've been trained to prioritize productivity over presence. But the body never stops speaking. It tells you through your breath how often it's held without you noticing. It tells you through your appetite how you forget to eat, or eat without tasting, or crave sugar just to feel comfort. It tells you through your posture, shoulders curled in, neck forward, always on alert. It tells you through your energy, the crash at 3 p.m., the second wind at midnight, the feeling of being too wired to rest but too tired to function. It tells you through your skin, your digestion, your immune system, your heartbeat, your dreams, and most of all, it tells you through your sleep. Insomnia isn't just a problem to fix, it's a message. A form of communication, a red flag that says, something in me still feels unsafe. Something in me hasn't been heard. So begin there. Before the supplements, before the hacks, before the weighted blanket and the sleep tracker and the blackout curtains, begin with curiosity. Not how do I make this go away, but what is my body trying to say? Sit with that question. Not to find an answer right away, but to offer space, to let your body know, I'm here, I'm listening. You don't have to shout anymore. You can place a hand on your chest and feel the warmth. You can place another on your belly and feel the rhythm. You can close your eyes and ask, what am I holding right now that I haven't named? And just wait. No pressure, no expectation, just breath and awareness. Sometimes nothing comes. That's okay. Sometimes emotion rises. That's okay too. What matters is the posture of listening, of becoming fluent in a language you were born with, but forgotten. Because when the body feels heard, it begins to soften. And softening is the first step towards sleep. In the next part, we'll explore how to give those stored emotions and stressors somewhere to go, not through dramatic release, but through safe, small, intentional practices that help your system let go little by little. Because once you start listening, the next step is honoring what you hear. Creating a safe space to feel without drowning. Feeling is not the enemy. In fact, it's the beginning of healing. But for many people, the idea of feeling your feelings is terrifying. Not because they don't want to, but because they've learned that once emotions start, they don't stop. That grief is bottomless. That anger is dangerous. That sadness will swallow them whole. So they don't open the door. They stay numb, distracted, fine. They hold it together. They cope. They perform. And at night, when all the distractions fall away, their bodies pay the price. But what if feeling didn't have to mean falling apart? What if there was a way to feel, slowly, safely, gently, without drowning? That's what this part is about. Creating a safe space to feel doesn't start with crying for hours. It starts with permission, a quiet acknowledgement. There is something in me that wants to be seen. You don't have to fix it. You don't have to understand it. You just have to make room for it to exist. One way to do that is through somatic journaling, not writing paragraphs, just noticing and naming. Close your eyes, ask, what sensation do I feel in my body right now? You might say, tightness in my throat, or pressure in my chest, or heat behind my eyes. Then ask, if that sensation had a voice, what might it be trying to say? Maybe the tightness says, I'm afraid to disappoint people. Maybe the pressure says, I'm tired of pretending I'm okay. Maybe the heat says, I've been angry for years and no one noticed. You don't argue with it. You don't debate. You just write it down, like transcribing a language your body already speaks. Another tool is emotional mapping. You draw a simple outline of a human body, just a basic figure on paper. Then, with colored pens or your finger, mark where you feel tension, where you feel numb, where you feel warmth. You don't need to interpret it, just visualize what's happening inside. When you do this over time, you begin to notice patterns. You begin to realize how much you've been holding and where. Then there's micro-release. This is for people who are afraid that letting go of emotion means breaking down. Instead, you do it in small doses. Set a timer for 5 minutes. In that time, you give yourself full permission to feel whatever comes. Maybe you lie down and breathe. Maybe you cry quietly. Maybe you let your arms shake, or your jaw quiver, or your body move without controlling it. And when the timer goes off, you stop. Not because the emotion is done, but because you're building tolerance, slowly increasing your window of safety. You're teaching your system, it's okay to feel. You're not going to break. Another method is verbalizing aloud. In private, no audience. You sit somewhere quiet and simply speak what you're holding. I feel overwhelmed. I feel like no one really sees me. I feel like I've been carrying too much for too long. Even if your voice is shaky, even if no words come. The act of trying tells your nervous system that it matters. All of these are ways of creating space, not space to fall apart, but space to release. Because your emotions don't need to explode. They just need somewhere to go. And when they have that, when your system learns it can express without being flooded, sleep starts to return. Not because you tricked your brain, but because you stopped locking the door. In the next part, we'll explore how these unprocessed emotions, when ignored, don't just disappear, but come back through your dreams, your nighttime restlessness, your fragmented sleep. We'll talk about what it means when your sleep is technically enough, but never restorative. Because sometimes your body sleeps, but your heart stays awake. The connection between suppressed emotion and fragmented sleep. There's a kind of sleep that looks fine on paper. You go to bed at a decent hour. You wake up at a reasonable time. Maybe your sleep tracker even shows 6, 7, 8 hours. But you still wake up tired, foggy, heavy, like you spent the night fighting something, like you dreamed your way through a battlefield, and maybe you did. Because when emotions don't get released during the day, they don't disappear. They simply wait for the only time your guard is down, when you sleep. This is why sleep fragmentation, waking up frequently, feeling unrested, tossing and turning, often has less to do with noise or temperature and more to do with emotional residue. You didn't cry today, but your body remembers the sadness. You didn't express anger, but your jaw clenched through the night. You didn't acknowledge fear, so your nervous system stayed just alert enough to never fully let go. People often think sleep is just about shutting down the brain. But it's also about integrating the emotional experiences you didn't process while awake. And when your system has too much backlog, too many unfinished emotional threads, sleep becomes shallow. The body never drops fully into the restorative stages. It keeps surfacing. It stays cautious. Not because it wants to sabotage you, but because it still doesn't feel safe. Sometimes that shows up in vivid dreams or night sweats. Sometimes it shows up as waking at the same hour every night, often between 2 and 4 a.m., the window when the body processes emotion most deeply. Sometimes it shows up as waking up with a racing heart or a sense of dread that fades as the day begins. But whatever form it takes, fragmented sleep is often a sign that your inner world is busy. Still working, still holding, still waiting for you to notice. This is why emotional work isn't separate from sleep work. They are the same. Your emotional body and your sleep rhythms are tied together, moment by moment. When you give yourself space to feel, to name, to breathe into what's real, your system doesn't have to offload it at night. It doesn't have to disrupt your rest to do the work you didn't do in daylight. But don't mistake this for blame. You're not failing. You're surviving the best way you know how. If your body is waking you up, it's not betraying you. It's speaking to you. It's asking for softness. It's asking for space. It's asking to feel what's been avoided. Not all at once, but slowly, gently, with kindness. The more you meet those needs during the day, the more your nights begin to settle. You may still wake up sometimes. That's okay, but the quality of your rest will shift. Your dreams may soften. Your body may trust more deeply. Your mornings may begin with less dread. Because you're no longer carrying it all alone. You're learning to listen. You're learning to feel. And that, more than any sleep hygiene checklist, is what creates the conditions for deep, lasting rest. In the next part, we'll close this episode with something simple and profound. a permission slip. Not to fix everything tonight, but to believe that rest is still possible, even if you're still learning how to feel safe enough to receive it. Rest begins when you stop pretending you're fine. You've made it through another day. You've checked the boxes, answered the messages, smiled when you needed to, held in what no one could see. You've done your best. Again. But beneath all of that doing, something in you has been waiting. Not for more productivity, not for more strength, not for more pretending, but for the moment when you finally whisper, "I'm not fine," and that's okay. Because that's where rest begins. Not when your schedule clears, not when your room is quiet, not when you finally get all the right supplements lined up. Rest begins when you stop bracing, when you let your chest fall open without apology, when you let the mask slip, even if only in the dark, even if only to yourself. Rest begins when you stop demanding calm from your body while denying the chaos in your heart. You don't need to be fixed to be allowed to rest. You don't need to earn it. You don't need to prove how hard your day was. You don't need to hold it all together to be worthy of softening. You just need to stop pretending. Not because it's wrong, but because it's heavy. And your body, your beautifully sensitive, constantly working, always adapting body, is tired of carrying the weight of performance. When you tell yourself "I'm okay" out of habit, your nervous system stays alert. It knows you're not. It senses the tension in your shoulders, the tremble in your voice, the hesitation in your breath. But when you whisper, "I'm not okay," something changes. Your body sighs, it softens, it says, "Finally, honesty." That's the turning point. That's when healing begins. Not when you arrive at some perfect version of yourself, but when you stop running from the imperfect one that already exists. The one who's tired, overwhelmed, stretched thin, and still here, still breathing, still trying. So tonight, don't try harder, try softer. Don't numb it, name it, don't rush it, respect it, don't perform peace. Practice truth. Maybe you won't sleep perfectly, maybe you'll still wake up, maybe your mind will wander. That's okay, because rest isn't a result, it's a relationship. One you're rebuilding, gently, night by night, breath by breath, by showing up exactly as you are, without the pressure to be anything more. Let that be enough. Let you be enough, because you are, and you always were. If something in this episode touched you, even just a sentence, even just a breath, I hope you hold on to it gently, because healing your sleep isn't about perfection. It's about presence. And tonight, you gave yourself the gift of paying attention to your body, your emotions, your truth. That's not small, that's sacred. If you found value in this space, I'd love for you to stay connected. Go ahead and subscribe to the channel or follow the podcast so you don't miss what's coming next. In the upcoming episodes, we'll talk about nighttime anxiety, how food and breath impact your nervous system, and how to build micro habits that make rest feel less like a goal and more like a natural return. And if you know someone who lies awake with quiet stress, someone who functions well but secretly feels like they're falling apart, send this their way. You never know what soft moment could shift someone's night. I also want to hear from you. Truly. Drop a comment below or leave a review. What part of tonight's conversation did your body feel the most? What are you realizing about your own hidden stress? Remember, your rest doesn't need to look perfect. Your sleep doesn't need to be fixed overnight. You don't need to prove anything. You just need to keep showing up, slowly, softly, honestly. Thanks for sharing this space with me. Until next time, rest deeper and rest true.